Bonnie McNab, and I'm part of the McNab family who has been farming in the area since 1960. When I was younger, things that made me happy were the animals on the farm. The cats were my favorite thing, and I really enjoyed playing with them. And as I got older, I enjoyed reading. I have always enjoyed reading throughout my life, and I spend a lot of time in my downtime reading. And I have various different hobbies. So I had a garden at my place that was mostly just flowers, and I enjoy working out there in the garden, and also having peaceful times and quietness, and that makes me happy. Things that make me sad are things that have happened in my life. When I think about the different children that I looked after throughout my career, there's a lot of sadness there that I didn't really think affected me, and I realized as I went on throughout my career that it did affect me, and brought me a lot of sadness, and it took me a long time to sort of work through that. I also had a couple miscarriages in my life, and those made me very sad. It took a long time to sort of process that. I had buried that fairly deep, and that was a difficult time when that all sort of came to the forefront, and had to come to accept what had happened and move on with life afterwards. That was quite difficult. If we could have, or given them away if anybody would have wanted them. As we got older, our brothers have matured and are actually really good to us. They don't pick us on us anymore like they used to, and they're all very different in their personalities. My older brother is quite a bit like Archie is quite a bit like my dad in his mannerisms and things like that. Murray is more the busy all the time, and has to be doing things, or else he's just sleeping, I think, because he doesn't process things in the same way everybody else does. Bruce was always a quiet one when we were growing up, and I think he still is to a certain degree. He's had lots of challenges in his life, and he is still a very good brother. And Ross used to be kind of I don't know, he would expected a lot of us when we were younger, and he's become a really good friend as we've gotten older, and he's a very good support for Jesse and I as we have gone through things and trials in our lives. And he's a good person to work with on the farm. He's a very hard worker. He expects a certain amount out of you, but he always gives 200% more, so yeah, can't complain about that. Oh yes, Jessie. she's a character. She's full of energy, and she's got quite the sense of humor. She used to use it. It used to be quite cutting, and she's learned throughout life that it's hard. You can hurt people with your humor if you are sarcastic and things like that. And she uses her humor in a better way now, and it's more subtle now and less cutting, so it's nice to see. And she's probably my best friend. She's a really good person, for sure. I think they would say that I'm a patient person, and that I have a big heart, and most of the time I'm kind. I think those are probably the bigger points that they would use to describe me. I remember the first thing that I remember doing on the farm was my sister and I were so little, we hadn't started school, and we were planting corn, and at that time we had to plant the corn by hand, and we didn't have a corn planter. And so my brothers, they did the planting of the corn because they could count better than we could and space the corn apart. And we were so small that we just got the job of hoeing the corn. And then when I was 7 years old, my grandpa bought us a corn planter, and it was a big change for us on the farm. My mom was a very strong lady as far as her personality. She was the one that really, my dad worked hard on the farm, but my mom worked very, very hard. And she was the main force behind getting us going and getting up in the morning. She was always up before everybody else was. She would have us all organized and off. Dad would tell the boys what they were going to do, but Mom would organize Jesse and I and send us off out to the field, and also helped us with running the sales room that we had and selling the produce. So I started out working on the farm when I was younger, and then when I graduated from high school, I went to university for a short while and then didn't know what I wanted to do. So then I worked with my brothers doing construction for a short period of time, and then worked as a nanny in New York State for a while. And I also worked as a nanny just down the road from our place for about a year and a half. And after that, I went up to Prince Rupert, and I worked there as a janitor for a year. And while I was there, I decided that that wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. And I went into nursing and did my diploma program in Kamloops. And then I started working, I wanted to work in pediatrics. And so I went up to Grand Prairie in northern Alberta and worked there for 3 years. And then I went down to Children's in Vancouver and worked there for 12 years before I moved back over to the island. And then when I was started in Nanaimo, and I worked there for a number of years, ended up that I wasn't able to do nursing anymore and came back to working on the farm, which was actually a good fit for me. Having the fresh air and the exercise was really good for my mind healing and getting me going again. And so that's how I ended back on the farm again. When I look at the future of the farm, I'm not really sure where things are going to go. Obviously, we can't keep farming forever. And as we age, then it ends up that you aren't able to farm. I don't know right now. The 6 of us own the farm, and it's hard to say whether we will end up selling the farm when we're no longer able to farm it. There's so many nieces and nephews that I have, and they range in age all the way from 3 years old up until the mid-30s, so that makes it difficult. When we start in the spring, we are usually unwrapping all the hives that have been wrapped up for the winter, and then we'll take the hives from one central location, and then there's 5 or 6 different yards that we'll take the bees to, and so that there's not too many bees on one area. So, for instance, at our farm right now, we have about 200 hives that are here. And then other places, they might only have 50 hives, depending how big the property is. Some places have only, or have 150 hives. So it just really depends on the size of the property and what might be out there for the bees to get. From the bees, as everybody knows, there's just one queen in each colony, and the bees all have to kind of work together to make that the colony thrives. And what I've learned is that the queen, she lasts for a couple of years. The other bees, they only last 21 days and then they die. And then the queen will be laying eggs, and it takes 21 days for once the egg has been laid until the new bee will actually emerge. So it's kind of interesting that they live 21 days and it takes 21 days to produce another bee. I think that's pretty miraculous myself. So we sell at the Duncan Market. Usually we start selling there when the corn gets ready. We'll sell at the Cedar Market, same thing, once the corn gets ready. And we sell in Nanaimo at the Wednesday Market, and that one we usually start before the corn gets ready. We'll start out with just like some zucchini and some potatoes and a few other vegetables that we'll have, and start selling there, and then that will go on usually until the end of October. We also have a stand at our farm that is just an honor system, and people can come and they can pick up their vegetables, and then there's a little place where they can put the money into. The markets are kind of like your, I don't want to say your reward, but in a way they are, because you actually get to talk to the customers, and there's certain amount of satisfaction in the person actually coming and buying your produce, and you know that they appreciate it. At the farm, like I said, it's a self-serve and honor system. So sometimes you will certainly, it's not like you don't interact with the customers at all, because often you'll be putting things up on the stand and there'll be somebody there and they might make some comments and that. But it is almost like your reward when you go to the markets, and like I said, you get to interact with the people and find out what their thoughts are on the products that you have. It's a bit more personal. I think this spring has been a little bit warmer, so it might be that we can get things into the ground a bit quicker than what we did last year. Of course, the big thing is always about how much rain we get over the summer, and as everybody knows, the summers are getting drier and hotter. So we're fortunate in that we have irrigation and we're able to water for the plants, otherwise they wouldn't manage. So that's been a big help, and the weather definitely affects things. You spend a lot more time out there hauling irrigation pipes around and stuff like that when it's hot and dry. We do plant this similar squash each year. We used to be able to get squash seed from a variety of different places, and what I've noticed is that there's less variety as the years have gone by, and so we end up, I would say we probably have between 30 and 40 different squash types that we grow on the farm, and that ranges like from the zucchinis and then right up to the winter squash, which are anything that takes about 100 days or so to plant, or to grow, I should say. So those ones are like Jardale and any of the cobachas and things like that. They take longer. So there's a little bit of a break sort of after the seeds are planted and they get put out in the ground, and then you're waiting for the weeds to grow, and that doesn't seem to take very long. And then there's the weeding to be done. So, and that kind of takes into when you're starting, you do the weeding, and then it kind of leads into the first of the vegetables getting ready, and then you have to start picking them or harvesting them and getting them ready for sales. So yeah, it keeps you busy. What we do is we plant similar amounts every year, or have been the last probably 5 or 6 years. And if we end up with a surplus, then we give it away. There's the gleaner people that come and they help to pick the corn if the corn's getting past, like one patch is getting past what we can sell, and then we'll go on to the next patch that's getting ripe, and they'll come and take off the corn that was left. The squash, we've ended up that we've donated quite a bit to, there's a soup kitchen in Nanaimo that is happy to have the squash. And then there's also been, we've just connected with the First Nations group that's close to us, and we were able to give them quite a bit of squash last year that they're able to use for themselves, and then also they had a mom and baby program, and so they were using the squash for that, so that was good. Yeah, it's nice not to see anything go to waste. I think the big thing is actually the managers at the markets. They really set the tone. I haven't had much to do with the Duncan and the Cedar market because my older brother does that. Ross and myself, another brother and myself, do the one in Nanaimo, and the manager there is very friendly and approachable and has a very open mind, and so I find that it really makes a difference. It sets the tone for the market, and it's very inviting. Getting ready, then there's the picking of the produce, and there's getting it all washed and that, because it has to be washed before you can sell it to the markets or at the farm stand, and so that takes up quite a bit of time, and weighing and packaging the different potatoes and other things that we have to sell. So yeah, it one day just kind of leads into the next, and next thing you know, it's the end of October and you're pretty much done for the year, or at least I'm pretty much done for the year. So in the springtime, we start planting the squash in the greenhouse, and so these are just little peat pellets, and we put them into the trays, and then the trays go into the water, which is over there, and the peat pellets will rise, and then we put the seeds in, and then we usually, around this time of the year, it takes usually about a week or maybe a bit more depending how cold it is, and then the little seedlings will start to sprout and grow, and then we keep them in here. Usually it's about anywhere from 3 weeks to a month, depending how wet the ground is outside, and then we can rototill the ground and plant them out and then start them growing. We used to directly plant them into the fields outside, but unfortunately the mice would just eat the seeds and you would end up with nothing. So, and we were replanting many times, and of course then it gets later on in the season and you don't end up with any squash. So this helps to eliminate some of that problem. The mice don't seem to bother them once they're already sprouted and growing, so that works out well. And in the springtime we plant anywhere between 2,000 and 3,000 squash that we have in here, so this whole table usually is filled up with squash that will get put out. And sometimes we put some of the tomatoes and peppers. I'm trying those in my house this year, started them earlier, and it hasn't really been a success, but I think I started them a little too early, so next year I'll have to adjust that and change